Yeah, yeah.
I think you like what I didn't tell you. I got rid of him.
You got rid of him?
Yeah.
Excellent. You know what? I'm just going to give you an A. Well, why?
I just didn't want to do
That's really good. That's probably just a creep. Yeah, most guys are. I mean, no one in this class, but outside of this class, most guys. So what are you going to do now with all that loneliness?
that.
Watch movies? Good morning, Aaron. Well, is there anything you guys want to talk about? See, this is an easy way to get an A in the class. At the very start of the class, just say you have a companion. In the middle, just say you dumped him or her, and then I'll give you an A. So is there anything you guys want to talk about that's interesting for me? Okay. How about now? Hello? It's all good. Armand,
Oh, what is it? Daylight saving time? What time is it?
well, you're in the other class,
Oh, yeah, okay.
but you can come in this class. No, just come sit. We won't bother you. Just come sit.
This is the first time I see the class gonna conclude. We come here sometime early. But, excuse me, I thought the time was a little different, so thank you. I'll see you at 9:30 then.
No, that's tomorrow. Today's Tuesday.
Oh, yeah, right. Today is Tuesday, huh?
Yeah, it's okay. I make the same mistake.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. No, it's good to see you. So, still no questions, no comments about anything? That's your breakfast?
Yes.
Richard.
How do you help a child process trauma?
I'm sorry?
How do you help a child process trauma?
So, Terry,
No,
how are you?
good.
You like my coffee? Little white, little black? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So, there is, I think, the experience of trauma and being protected, and the experience of trauma and not being protected. If I was to give you an example, and I'm winging this, so I'm sure there are much better people out there who can answer your question way better than I, but let's say what's happening in Palestine right now where you have no idea if you're going to survive till tomorrow. And you have newborns seeing this, you have 1-year-olds seeing this. There's no home, no shelter, no food. And it's a profoundly traumatic experience. But I suppose as these tiny little kids are forced into a nomadic existence, moving from point A to point B every 5 minutes, they're protected by their parents, if they're still alive. They hug them, kiss them, sacrifice their own food to give to them. If the parents are dead, they're taken care of by other people. And so even though it's a very traumatizing experience physically, emotionally, to some extent, they're being protected. And so, despite the fact that they're experiencing this drama on a minute-to-minute basis, it balances out by the protection given to them by either the parents, or the community in general. There are sometimes the experience of trauma where there is no protection, there is no support system. So I suppose for the kids in Palestine, if you're talking about the formative years where the concrete is beginning to be set, every time a crack appears, the community jumps in and glues the crack together. And so they kind of grew up to be relatively healthy. As I was sharing with my students yesterday in class, a lot of our friends who came here in the 1970s and 80s, they were political prisoners, and they were tortured in prisons. And so when we were younger and we would go swimming, they would take off their shirts and you would see all these marks being whipped, being burnt. And somehow they survived. They didn't need therapy at all. They got married, had kids. They're very prosperous, And so you have certain cultures where they kind of understand that life is just a very traumatic experience, and the only thing you really have is not so much money, it's just people around you who love you, support you, protect you. And that's all you need. So it balances out. When you have trauma and it remains unprotected from a very, very young age, you have cracks all over this, so to speak, concrete. And now your question is, well, what do you do with a child who's experienced an unprotected trauma? Well, what usually happens, I don't know if you've ever had arguments or fights with your companion or disagreements. What usually happens after a while, you give up. And as a man, you usually just give up, unless you happen to be a very dominating character in the household. So you become passive. And when you become passive, you become invisible. And when you become invisible, you're kind of like a dog who's about to die, just leaves the house, goes somewhere in the corner where you can't find the dog and just dies slowly. That's what usually happens in a relationship. You kind of just open the door, go for a long, long walk. You're not really good company. You become introverted. And you feel like abandoned, that there is no one to talk to. And what usually happens is if that trauma continues, and if it's unprotected, from a very, very young age, you come to understand that you're really in this life on your own by yourself. People will say hello to you, but they don't really mean it. They'll give you money, but it doesn't mean they love you and they're going to protect you. And so from a very young age, you become a loner. Sometimes you can become like a Picasso and be a loner. That's okay because you're creative. Your art becomes your companion. As, a kid who is 5 or 6 or 7, you haven't yet developed skills, if you have any, creative talents about you. And so it's you and the emotions created by the trauma, and you're lonesome. And now your question is, well, how do you put this kid back together? So there are two parties in the scenario, let's just say. Let's say I am your son. By default, you're my father. And let's say you're my stepfather. Okay. And you walk into my life when I'm 4 or 5, damage has already been done. And you happen to be a relatively decent fellow, you want to take care of me, you want to love me, hug me, kiss me, all that stuff, but you realize that every time you walk towards me, I walk 10 steps back. I'm not approachable. So there is me and my brokenness, and there is you and your sense of generosity and compassion. I have lost my trust and my faith in the closest people to me. The people who were supposed to take care of me abandoned me. I don't mind becoming intimate and close to strangers. I can tell them my stories. Kind of like some of you in this class, raise your hand and you tell me some of the most intimate events in your life. But if it happens to be your companion, for example, you won't dare, because you know from experience that they have a tendency once in a while to come back and bite you from the very thing that you gave them. Okay? So it's much easier to find comfort and trust in the arms of another stranger than someone who's a friend. So I suppose the question then is, well, how do I gain his or her trust? Well, you can't. If you have a huge capacity to be abused, and I'm your son, I'm the 6-year-old. You come home after being at school for a number of hours and then work for a number of hours, you come home exhausted. And if Marx is right, that society and culture has turned you into an alienated self, that you are a stranger to yourself, that your job is not an extension of your soul or creativity. When you chat with other strangers, it's not really anything creative, it's not anything meaningful, it's just a pastime. To make sure that there is another human being around you, breathing, walking. You don't really need to be intimate, you just want to know that you're not the only one on this planet. And there is this deep need that all of us have. You want to be seen, you want to be relevant, above all, you want to be loved, and so you walk towards me. You've had a hard day, you're exhausted, and I walk away. Two things happen to you. There is the reflective part of you, and there is the instinctual part of you. You walk towards me after a day of exhaustion, I walk away, instinctually you say, forget this. I'm just going to go make myself a sandwich, turn on the TV, and just sit back and relax. You know. That's the instinctual part. You get hurt, your garbage bin is full because the day has trashed a good portion of who and what you are. The reflective part is the moment the instinct is about to kick in, you have to be very mindful, very aware, and I don't know how those things come. All I know is that very much like playing the piano, it takes many, many years of training where you catch yourself, and you have to catch yourself. And the problem with the reflective part of you is that you have to see pain, you have to be okay with pain, you have to be okay with hurt, and you say, okay, you know, he's 5, this is what he's gone through. I'm 35, he's 5, I've had what he wanted, what he didn't get. I'm just going to be patient. The problem with patience is that you have to overcome a good amount of negative emotions that arise out of you, you know. Now, one of the things about you being the teacher and me being your student, in other words, I'm your child, you want to teach me a few things. You're the teacher, the parent, you want to give me some things. I'm not receptive, but you have some merchandise to give me. Because it's foreign to me, because it's frightening to me, I am going to do whatever I possibly can that's in my power to reject you. I will be abusive for a long time. One of the problems I had with the movie Four Brothers, I don't know if any of you in this class have seen the movie, it's a beautiful movie, where you have 4 brothers, 2 black and 2 white, from completely different backgrounds, I suppose, you know, and yet they're willing to sacrifice their lives for their mother, who happens to be an old white lady, they're also willing to sacrifice their own lives for their siblings. And that in itself is a mysterious thing, that they've been in foster care for all these years, and for some strange reason, miraculously, all of them find themselves to be quite intimate. They have what we call brotherly love, which is a very, very strange thing. So if you were to kind of put the movie on pause and just reflect for a moment, how could four people from different walks of life, being abused, perhaps horrifying abuse, how can they overcome all of their past, love their adopted mothers, and then fall in love with another stranger whom they will eventually call a brother? That's a great amount of sacrifice on the part of every single character in that movie initially. And so what you need to understand is, me as your son, I'm going to abuse you. That's the only way I can protect myself. What if I run towards you the following day and very much like my father, my biological father, you slap me? I have no idea. I mean, you're not guaranteed. So out of protection, I run towards you and then I run back. And I will do this over and over and over again. And every time you scream, every time, I say to myself, I knew it. You know, if you've seen the movie Freedom Writers, you know, there is this really nice and kind Caucasian, i.e. white woman, being the teacher of this classroom, and the student body, some are black, some are Mexican, but they're people of color. And she tries to be very, very nice until someone triggers her. And then it comes out, the viciousness that lives inside her. And one of the students in the back says, well, I was waiting for this to come out, now you show yourself. And that's the thing. Every time that your behavior is categorized as negative, it's going to take the child all the way back to the time when he was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you're going to be put in the same category. He hugged me yesterday, but today he's going to spank me. So it's best not to be close to him. So as long as you know you're going to be abused for a long, long time, and as long as you can catch yourself, just in case your instinct says slap him or scream at him or walk away, if you can endure the abuse for 5, 6, 9, 10 years, you know, and there are no guarantees. It's like anything else. You know, we have this saying, it's a poem by Hafez, that in times of crisis, when things are really dark and bleak, and you just want to end your life, something about you comes up and you enter this prayer mode. And you don't have to be religious for this. Maybe you read dialogues of Plato, maybe you read a book by Oprah Winfrey, who the hell knows how you pray. Maybe you listen to some music. And Hafez says, whenever you find yourself in this dark, bleak space, a bow and an arrow, few arrows come out of you, and you let go of 1,000 arrows, and you hope that one of those arrows hits the bullseye. Which means that you keep showing kindness and you'll be abused. You keep showing kindness and you'll be abused. And after 10 years, you'll continue to show kindness, and all of a sudden, he'll just run to you and says, Dad. But it took about 10 years. But there are no guarantees. You may, have 1,000 arrows leave the bow, but no bullseye. One of our relatives, she had just turned 15, and hormonally, it was just upside down. Everything. It's kind of like Hurricane Katrina, where as you're driving the streets, you want to get away from where you live. There are alligators chewing on someone's body, and all of a sudden you realize, well, this is not, some third world country. This is America. And so the trauma just turns everything upside down. What happened to this young woman, I remember, If it was just left to her parents, after a while, you just lose patience. But about 50 people jumped in the Persian community. Every single day, she had about 20, 30 people, visiting her, taking care of her, going on walks with her, and listening to her same old story over and over and over and over again. And eventually, once the brain chemistry and various other things kind of balanced out, she went back to normal. She recently got her master's at some forsaken school. She's working out. But that's what trauma really is. You need a whole bunch of people to come together, parents by themselves, because the emotions run so high and so intense. Parents eventually kind of just run out of gas, and rightly so, it's too much. So you need the support of your neighbors, your brothers, your sisters, your aunts, uncles, grandparents. You need a whole host of people, So again, as long as you're patient, that's the only way. There is no quick road. There is no royal road. It's really mostly a shot in the dark. Sometimes I just, like yesterday, I got to campus around 4 o'clock, and it was because I couldn't sleep. I went to bed around 11, woke up around 2. And I was exhausted yesterday, so my class was really, really quite horrible, I think. And then I went home, and I have like all these books everywhere. I would look at the title, I would open the cover, I would read a couple of lines, and I would throw the book away in disgust. Sometimes you bang on all these different doors in hopes that something can bring you an ounce of solace and comfort, but nothing can. And so I was in a lousy mood the entire day. And eventually I just went bang my head against the tree. And it helped. So, yeah. Whenever you're working with people, it's going to be difficult. Always. Children more so, because you kind of sense that they have lost something that should have remained protected. Good luck. Let me just say this last piece, and then we'll move on to questions that are less intense. If you're able to create a positive trauma, and when I say positive, you will only experience the positivity of the trauma like 10, 15, 20 years down the line. When I was very young, I suffered from the confusion of any young person. What am I doing here? Why did my parents give birth to me? They're so ridiculous. They're stupid. I'm stupid. And so there were many days where I had negative emotions that led into me thinking that perhaps I should end my life because it's not worth living. Okay? I kind of just felt lost on the inside as well as the outside, because there was nothing I can hang on to. And so what happened is my emptiness was housed or protected by my teacher, Hussein. Okay? And what he did, I don't think he was aware of it. I don't think I was aware of it. All I knew is that for whatever the reasons are, when I'm over there in his house, at his house, and him talking about the Quran, about poetry, I kind of find some comfort in it, even though the philosophy of life that he was imparting was quite sad and miserable. But it worked for me. I did have some friends while I was dark and gloomy, but when I got to know him a little bit, when I got to become addicted to him a little bit, his house, his philosophy, the gatherings, music, I lost my friends. So the only people I had in my life was myself, Hussein, Mehrdad, and another Hussein. The other Hussein was married with a few kids, so he couldn't be touched. Mehrdad was also married. He couldn't be touched either. So it was just me. So every time I would call Hussein and say, I'm going to come to your house, he would say, I'm busy. Busy? You ruined me. What do you mean you're busy? And so I sent some money to my grandfather in Iran, and he shipped me some books. Very, very difficult books in Arabic and Persian to read. But, I struggled through them. That was a good companionship. And then I got my degrees. And I thought, well, now that I have all these degrees, I can get a job, One of the problems with the examined life, as Socrates would say, is that you're pushed within yourself. And you have to examine all the thoughts, all the emotions, your interaction, your conversations. In other words, you put a why after everything. And the problem with putting a why after everything is that there are no answers. Why doesn't the star fall? I don't know. Why am I friends with you? I don't know. Why am I having sex? I don't know. So you are left with a good amount of I don't knows, okay? And so you go to these interviews, they say, tell us about you. I'm an idiot. What do you want to know? Well, why do you think you're qualified for this position? I'm suicidal. I'm not, And so you have all these degrees, and the interview that was supposed to last for an hour and a half ends in like 10 minutes. And you go into your car, you say, what the hell? You went to school for this? Look at you. You're a complete mess. And then eventually you kind of become accustomed, used to the fact that you're a loser. As I was. And then little by little you become comfortable in it. That, well, this is just the way my life is. And that gives you a tremendous sense of power. That you go to a committee and say, well, tell us about yourself. Yeah, I went to school, got all these degrees. I know A from B, B from C, C from D. But the truth is, life is too mysterious, too grand. I have no idea. Even Socrates said, he can't really tell you what philosophy is. What the hell do you expect from me? And that gets you a job. There is something about being honest to a committee made up of like 20 people who have lost their sense of who and what they are because they've been in bureaucracy in such a long time. And then after 20 years, you realize, if it wasn't for all that darkness, the trauma that Hussein had created for me, he made me become addicted to him. And when I became addicted to him, I became less addicted to life on the outside. But you don't really understand the meaning of that until some years have gone by. You've kind of, if you can use the word successful, So if you can create that trauma, and if the other person can live with that trauma for a while, then hopefully after 5, 10, 15, 20 years, they'll come to appreciate it. But it takes a long time. Yes, Terry. I know, yeah. Yeah.
What happens when you suppress your feelings inside?
So, imagine you're a 15-year-old girl, okay, young woman, and your body is beginning to blossom. And you have watched a lot of movies where boys and girls kind of just, hang out and do funny things. Like the Garden of Eden, God says there's a tree over there, just don't get too close. Just in case you do, don't touch. Just in case you do, don't pick. Just in case you do, don't bite. Just in case you do, don't chew. Just in case you do, don't swallow. Right? So first he tempts you, then he says, I know I've tempted you, but don't go there. So you watch a lot of movies that have injected a good amount of curiosity about you. And you go out there, and for the first time, a guy looks at you and says, oh, well, that must be attractive. And then instinctually, there is a sexual drive, which is one of the most powerful drives that live inside us. And that's why the human race doesn't disappear. And so you're beginning to explore, discover yourself physically, sexually, emotionally. But the platform is sex. Okay. But you have a very healthy appetite, let's just say it. You know, today is Joe, tomorrow is Jack, after tomorrow is Jim. For some strange reason, you just like people whose names start with J. Okay? Following this, Jesus. Not that. So you sleep around. Okay. And it's fun. Sex brings you to life. Past goes away. Unless you've had this traumatic past and you're quite angry. You have like angry and violent sex. That's a different story. You're kind of having sex. You're like more civilized, you know. And so there comes a point where something about you matures and you say, I'm tired of just like having sex with all these losers. I want something that's meaningful. And now you go to a party and there are 50 men out there and they're all eyeing you. They all want you. But you've been there, you've done that. And so you say, I think I'm going to go to that corner over there. That guy looks interesting. And you have a conversation with him. And you realize, well, he's got some brains. He's got the ability to think a little and put his thoughts into a sort of language that's inspiring, exciting, interesting. And then you test him out a little bit and then you sleep with him. And it's wonderful. And then you realize, well, he's no good. Emotions are very much the same. Life has a tendency of creating all sorts of buttons and then pushing those buttons, and you have a tendency of exploding. Rightly so. Life is tough. Life is complicated. You want to figure things out, and sometimes things can be figured out for a long, long, long time, and they create negative emotions. So very much like the way you behaved when your body was growing and you were having sex, you also have this pressure being built inside you, and it's not sexual. It's emotional. It has to do with either you being a mystery to yourself and you have all these emotions and you want to vent, or life has triggered you and you want to vent. And so any ear that's out there, you want to like jam into it. Okay? Now you use other people's ears as men used you, let's just say. But there comes a point where you realize, what exactly is it that I'm trying to communicate? And why do I want to tell other people my secrets, people who don't really care for me? I don't want to do a hit and run. I want to do a hit and stay. So you realize out of the 20 friends that you have, there is one who is able to hold your secrets really, really well. She's able or he's able to honor it. And so you go to him or her and you tell them exactly what lives inside you. And you do the same thing with your emotions as you did with your body. Okay? I'm not going to just lay my body with just anyone. And so you say, I'm not going to lay my emotions next to just anyone who says, well, let me hear your problems. The other aspect about emotions is that they have a tendency of making us feel as if our life is interesting and important and significant and has value. You may come to a place in life, and I don't know, you may come to a place in life where you realize that any conversation that revolves around you is not interesting. We don't want to talk about you. You may want to talk about something that lives inside you, an experience that you have magically transformed into something universal. The Buddha can come forth and say, well, let me tell you what happened to my life. That's not what he says. He says, what I've discovered is that, yes, I very much enjoy the conversation we're having, but the truth is, in 10 minutes' time, I'll really get bored. It'll become old, and then it'll sicken me, and then it'll just be dead to me. I feel nothing for it. And so he won't engage in any conversation, period. So there are these I suppose, transitions we go through, these stages we go through. As a kid, you're trying to discover yourself, figure out who and what you are. So you talk about your feelings, your thoughts, you have a journal, you share your stuff with other people. Then hopefully you'll get to a place where, let's say, maybe you'll visit, Florida, or you go to Palestine. And as you're on the plane, you talk about all the things that happened to you as a child. And then you are roaming through the land and you realize this devastation, where people don't have anything. Here you are, you bring Twinkies to class and you eat them with a glass of water and you sit there comfortably. You have a chair you place your behind on, and you have another chair you place your feet on. You're comfortable. You wear good clothes, you take a shower, you actually have the ability to smile because you find things to be funny. And you go there and you realize the only language that people have there is tears. And then every time you want to open your mouth and talk to them about your issues, what you have witnessed and what you witness kind of embarrasses you. So you keep your mouth shut. And the only thing you can say is there anything I can do for you? Can I cook for you, clean for you, do this for you, do that for you? And little by little, as they grow in presence, you diminish. There is this wonderful story. I think you can find the Gospel of Mark, if I'm not mistaken, where the disciples of John the Baptist tell him that, Jesus is here. And the first thing he says is, I think he must become more visible and I must slowly diminish, become less visible. And eventually he's hanged by the king and all that. And that's the point. When you find someone either who knows more than you do or who has experienced more trauma than you, it's best to keep your mouth shut. And should you hang out with those people more often, you become less and less and less visible until hopefully you won't exist. And that's a great baptism to go through. One of the nice things about falling in love, which unfortunately our good friend here trashed, for good reasons, good for you by the way, is that one of the things that love does, especially if you happen to be in a position of lesser power, is that you're always there to please the other person. And in trying to please the other person, you kind of forsake your own desires. You don't exist. And it's one of those happiest moments of your life where you become this lamb of God, if you will, or lamb of love, So I forget your question, so. Spike, anything?
How do you overcome your
what?
desire for human connection?
I'm sorry?
How do you overcome your desire for human connection?
Overcome your desire for human connection. Well, first of all, it's hardwired in us. At the moment you're born, you want someone to hold you. It's just right there, and there is no escape from that. And there is something about parents. I remember Will Smith and, was it Jaden? Some ridiculous kid. They were on Oprah Winfrey show. And it was like the first time they were both on the show. And as Jaden was speaking, Will Smith all of a sudden jumped on him and began to kiss him. And she says, Dad, please. He says, man, I just want to kiss you. I'm your dad. And it's inside us. Love has this very infectious quality to it. It forces you to jump on other people, hopefully people that you know. Otherwise you'll be sued, especially in this country. So it's hardwired inside us. Second, because you kind of see your own reflection in other people, you find yourself attracted to certain people. Why and how and who, that's a conversation for a different day. And so you gravitate towards those people and you talk to them, you just hang out with them. There is something about them that allows you a glimpse into yourself. That is also a very strange thing about us. There is also the forces of just the world itself. Sitting in a boring class, it's awful. Going to a job that you don't like, it's awful. Being in a relationship you don't like, it's awful. Looking at a sink filled with dishes, it's awful. So you have all these pressures inside you. And you need other human beings. Sometimes just put on music, and the music happens to be your companion. So we need all these things to kind of vent through. They're important. There comes a certain stage in your life where you say, I don't know if Oakland has this waste management that you're allowed maybe one or two bulk pickups where you kind of walk around your house and you realize you have all this junk you've had for all these years. Your wife, your kids, your husband, your in-laws, your outlaws, tables and chairs. You want to just put them, in the street for the garbage bin, for the garbage truck to come and pick up. And what you realize once in a while as you're driving is that there are all these wonderful, beautiful, almost brand new things that are left, on the pavement for waste management to pick up and take with them. But how long did it take for the owners of all this junk to kind of say, well, I don't need this and I don't need that and I need this other thing? It took them 5, 6, 10, 20, 50, 30 years. What usually happens is you say, but do I really need this couch? But then you sit down and say, yeah, it feels really good, I need it. And because you have a history with the sofa, it takes you some time, because it has to some extent sentimental value, sofa, right? And then there comes this breaking point where you say, you know what, I just don't want it anymore. So it's a gradual process. Sometimes you can kind of be torpedoed into it. چون که صد آمد 90 هم پیش ماست. It's a line by Hafiz. If, for example, the maximum number of dollars you could have in your pocket is 100, you could only have $100 in your pocket. Well, if someone gives you 10, you're going to hunger for another 90. If someone gives you 20, you're going to hunger for another 80. If someone gives you 100, there is nothing to hunger after or thirst after. You have your max, okay? Now, one of the ways, at least it happened for me, is that Hussein was like a Costco. Conversation was meaningful. I had music. We had gatherings. I would sing, I would play the music, people would listen to me. It was wonderful. For 30 years, I didn't need any friendships. My best companions were books for a long, long time. And just in case books couldn't do it for me, I would write. I would either write poetry for my teacher, okay, or I would just write poetry for myself. And what you realize is the more self-sufficient you become, the less need you have for other people or other things. But initially, you can't start your life by saying, oh, I read Hermann Hesse Siddhartha, or I read some book, and this guy just walked into the forest and needed no one. Oh, you may read like Walden by Henry David Thoreau. You say, yeah, that's the sort of life I want. You know what? I'm just going to not pay rent, be evicted, go to Target, steal a tent, and go by the estuary. And put out my tent there. I don't need anyone. And that particular mood or inspired moment will eventually create a good amount of negative impacts on you. You're not ready for that. You're not ripe enough. You were just inspired. It's kind of like putting a turkey in the oven, turning it to 900, and 10 minutes later it's like golden brown, it looks really, really good, and then you cut it and eat it. And it's raw, and then you have diarrhea. And then you're taken to a Highland hospital where they kill you, okay? The best way to cook a turkey is 250 for about 10 hours. You have to be ripe enough, slowly be seasoned through reflection, through life's betrayals, your best friend's betrayals, all sorts of things. And you simmer in them, you understand them, you process them, you learn from them, and then you'll come to a place where you say, you know what? I don't think I want to get married again. I don't need to talk to my friends all the time. Once in a blue moon is fine. Maybe I don't need to look at my cell phone all the time. Life is not that interesting, but it takes time. Should you do things in an untimely manner, envy and resentment are not going to leave you. If you're satisfied with walking, even if someone drives by a Mercedes-Benz, you won't covet it. You won't long for it. You're not going to have fantasies for, I want to buy a car. Because you've been cooked the right way. For the first many years of my teaching career, I would want my students to like me. You come to a certain place, you get a little older. Alzheimer kicks in. what happens today is forgotten like 10 minutes from now. And you say, okay, I don't really care. You don't like me? Fine, drop the class. But really, stay away from doing things in a rushed way, because you'll never get to your destination. Yeah. It's good to see you, Alexis. Olivia?
How do you avoid rushing?
I'm sorry?
How do you avoid rushing?
How do you avoid rushing? Yes. Yes. In a time where what you want to say to another through a text will take less than a second, in a culture where life is really speeding. Oh, thank you. Thank you. And if you have been contaminated by video games that are all about rush, and that's what the companies want to make sure that happens to you, that you become addicted to the speed. It's one of the problems I have in my classes. You have kids who have been playing video games since they were like 2 months old. And so it's always exciting. It's always filled with speed. And they come to class and say, can you talk a little faster? No. Well, I asked the question like 20 minutes ago. I don't have the answer yet. Well, just wait. Well, how long? Well, like 20 years. No. Can you give it to me like 2 minutes? So there's a certain cultural background that you need to understand first, okay? If, for example, and it's something we talk about, I think, in this class, that you sit back and you're, say, watching football, and halftime there's Beyonce, and she's topless. I mean, she's driving a Mercedes topless, not herself topless, even though that would be something to vomit. And as she's driving with the top off, the wind is blowing through her hair, and to her right is like the forest, to her left is the ocean, and above is Harry Potter. You say, man, that's really, really fun. And at the end, the advertisement tells you, this is called happiness. You say, oh my God. And so you go to In-N-Out, you fill out the application, you get a job, you save your money for the next 10 years, and lo and behold, you find yourself at the Mercedes-Benz dealership downtown Oakland, and you buy the most expensive Mercedes they have. You live in Hayward, by the way. And you're driving to Laney College at like about 7:45, best time, in the morning. And you look to your left, there's concrete. You look to your right, there's concrete. You look ahead of you, there's traffic, bumper to bumper. You look up, well, it's raining. You look behind you, two guys are fighting. You turn the radio on. They say that a couple of people just got shot. And you say, well, maybe it's because I didn't open the top. So you open the top, and now birds are pooping on your head. And you say to yourself, really? I spent the last 20 years of my life pursuing happiness, and I eventually got it. I'm not happy. Okay. Let me make this a bit more simple. Forgive me if this is a bad example, and it is, but it's the only one I got right now. Again, I apologize. Am I forgiven beforehand? Thank you. You saw her shaking. Yes. How old was your boyfriend, if I may ask?
19.
Idiot. So your boyfriend was 19. A 19-year-old punk, the depth of his intellect and the ripeness of his emotions, let's just say, are 1 gallon. That's a good analogy, right? I'm being very kind because when you go to Home Depot, you can find like a paint jar that's this big. But since I'm in a very generous mood, he's only a 1 gallon depth sort of a fellow. But how long do you think it's going to take you before you reach the max of his depth? A 5-minute conversation? And since you're a philosophy major, you just look at him and say, what a piece of shit. But I love him, right? And you realize that it doesn't take you very long, and you don't really have to be patient very much to kind of come to realize first how stupid you were for liking a man with 0 depth, and how stupid he is for having 0 depth. Imagine for a moment you like me. God forbid. How old am I? Soon to be 61. I don't know. I'm too old for you, but I'm just right for you. Oh, Terry. Now, you've been playing video games since you were 2. Your conversations are quite shallow. The way you think is even worse. No one's going to demand much of you. But I don't have time to waste. You come to my office and you ask questions and you rush for an answer. I can't rush for an answer. You know, we sit, we have tea. Say, well, can I ask a question now? Sure, but are you hungry? Let's have some food. And so you realize you spend an entire day drinking tea and having food, and we never get to your question. And then you come to the office the following day, and the following day, and the following day. 20 years pass by. And little by little you come to realize you've learned something profoundly valuable. You were trained how to be very patient. And in fact, forget your question, just go with the flow. So how do you stop rushing? If you hang out with people who have some depth in them, you have no choice but to be put on pause. You have no choice but to be pushed into hitting the brakes once in a while. They'll force slowness. You have no other choice. Or you can just leave. You know, one of the difficulties of the assignments that you have for this class is that you really just need to sit and think. Now, one of the, I think, problems that you have with philosophy is that they say, oh, well, it's just, some guy sitting somewhere and thinking. Something I do on a daily basis. Well, yeah, you think about shitty things. So when you write an essay, it's filled with shit. And so when I look at the essay, it smells. And then I got to take a shower afterwards. You're not like a Jean-Paul Sartre who sits in coffee shops and just watches people for about 15, 20 hours a day. You're not like a Plato who sits, locks himself in a room and just writes and writes and writes and writes and then edits his writing over and over again. So, just watch an action movie, but make sure you're not holding the remote. If you're addicted to action movies. Sometimes I go home and I watch Rambo. And when they're having a dialogue, I just fast forward it. I ain't got time for this. Just show me how you kill this person. That's fun. And so if you can again put yourself in the company of those who are really sad and thought about things and suffered a good amount of pain and trouble, you'll learn. I mean, look, sleeping with a prostitute is easy. You just need like a couple bucks. You know, in certain parts of Oakland, a nickel, right? But if you want to have an intimate relationship that has meaning and depth and value, it takes about 5 to 20 years. Terry,
Yes.
did I say anything funny? Rosalind, yeah, anything? I have this orange tree, and I don't know if it's a backyard, the front yard, somewhere there. Maybe right into the middle of the living room. And I did something really foolish yesterday. Something was attached to a branch. It looked like an orange. I thought it was a lime. It's an orange tree, but it was tiny, so I mistook it for a lime. And I yanked it off of the branch, broke the branch, took it inside, put a cut through it. It's unedible. When I looked at it, this tiny little unripe orange screamed at me, pick me, pick me. I kept telling the orange, you're not yet ripe. Pick me. I want independence. I want you. Figure that. A tiny little orange talking to me in such an erotic way. You know? Terry, there you go again. And eventually, you know, I picked it. Then I said, maybe I should just go and pick another one, because this is just useless. As I went to pick another tiny little orange that was green, not orange, looked at me and said, do not touch me. I said, no, I'll be gentle. I need another like 2-3 weeks or months to ripen. And once I ripen, I will fall from the branch organically. No one needs to apply any pressure. There are lots of unpleasant things that happen in life, and you want to throw away, get rid of the emotions. And the truth is, you're not ready, you're not ripe yet. If you want a certain emotion, a certain thought, a certain trauma to leave you, it has to become ripe. And you can't ripen it by forgetting about it. Sometimes you can distract yourself because they happen to you at a time where it's not right for you. Maybe you have an exam. Maybe you hang out with your boyfriend. Maybe you're taking your parents. But when those things go away, you have to go back to the trauma, whatever it may be. And you have to play with it. You have to allow the pain to season you. And once you're seasoned, I assure you, they will fall on their own. You don't need to do anything. I mean, look at the Catholic Church and all the sex scandals. All right, so you're two. You know, you're taking a dump and you see God. And then you call in your mom and say, Mom, wipe my ass. And your mom does. And as she's wiping you, you say to your mom, I want to be a priest. I just saw God. That's great. You have an inspired moment and you want your life to be transformed. Good for you. But you haven't ripened. You know, taste the comforts of food and shelter and clothing. Taste physical intimacy with another human being. Taste power. But then come to realize how useless they are. Then if you want to go join a monastery, then go join a monastery. You've been saturated with the things that kind of consume the rest of us down here. So today in this culture, there are all these self-help gurus telling you, well, why do you have fear? Don't fear anything. You know, get rid of your mind, get rid of your thoughts. Are you stupid? No, keep all of them. You know, be attached. And even if it's painful, be attached to the pain. Live with it, become intimate with it. And after 5, 6, 7, 8 years, they'll fall. Does that?
Speaking of gurus, what about Ram Dass?
Stupid. No, it doesn't work that way. I mean, look, not that it doesn't work that way, but you have to understand the following. I think every human being is like a billboard, has something to offer. You know, I have no doubt that Snoop Dogg comes up with merchandise that other people love. I have no doubt that Angelina Jolie is a commodity that some people look at and say, wow, I love that too. Okay. So you have all these different people who have something to offer, something to sell. The question is not what other people have. The question is, what exactly is it that you want to buy? Look, you have two guys. One says, I will give you a house, I will give you a car, I will give you money, I will give you comfort, and I'll give you devotion. That's a lot of stuff they want to give you. Okay? But you need to be responsible. You need to be mature to hold them and protect them well. Another says, listen, I can give you a good night. I'll take you to Pete's Coffee. I'll get you a cup of coffee. We'll go home in the back bedroom. They'll go at it for 10 hours. You say, whoa, never done 10 hours. I've done 9 and 45 minutes, but never 10. Okay? And then once the 10 hours is over, you're done. So you have two people. They're both making you some offers. The question is, where exactly are you in life? There are some people who gravitate towards Ram Dass. They like flowery language. You know, they like, you know, all the stuff about ego and consciousness, you know, all these like big words that mean nothing. And then you have other teachers who demand a lot from you. You know, and then you say, well, you know, Ram Dass is good. I mean, I go to the YouTube page and listen 10 minutes, and that inspires me for a day. Then you have other teachers who don't give you anything, but they take away the things you got. They take away your race, they take away your gender, they take away everything that makes you you. And you're left empty, and you say, well, shit, I don't want to do this, it's too painful. So it's not about what other people have to give you, it's what you're ready to receive. And you should consider yourself to be very, very lucky that you don't encounter people who have depth, because you're not pushed to do anything extraordinary. Terry? Abhi?
What is the meaning of absolute?
I no. I think it's one of those bumper stickers. I think, look, after class, I'm going to go to my office and watch 5 hours of pornography. And the reason I'm responding to your question in a relatively flippant way, but not really, is the following. Look, consider some of the stuff that you find in the New Testament, in the 4 Gospels. You have a man, absolute integrity, until he finds himself abandoned on the cross. Father, Father, why have you forsaken me? Oh, Jesus Christ, you were inviting all these people towards God, and all of a sudden you feel yourself abandoned by God? Absolute integrity until he gets to the Garden of Gethsemane. Let this cup pass by me. What you have is these different parts of the human being. You find yourself in a moment of inspiration. You're a poet. You find yourself at a certain moment as you're taking care of your kids where you're a saint. The next moment, different environment, you're in a completely different set of emotions, and you're doing something that this other person doesn't even know existed. So, do you have absolute integrity at moments of inspiration? Absolutely. Are you also human? who could potentially do damage, definitely. The problem is the following. There is this, look, one of the things that we do to our heroes, and it doesn't matter who your hero is, whether it's Malcolm X or Martin Luther, Mahatma Gandhi, Jesus Christ, or Muhammad, is that we are so deprived and depraved down here. And all of us in this class, without perhaps knowing, we are looking for inspiration. And since we can't be the generators of inspiration, we're looking at inspiration from someone else. So you read the dialogues of Plato, and that guy is inspirational. Okay? And what someone like Plato or Socrates or Jesus Christ do for us is that you say, I have found my Garden of Eden down here. In Socrates, I can rest. In Socrates, I have found an oasis. He's the Garden of Eden for me. He's my Sabbath. Okay? And you make him all the way to the top, very much like Yahweh. He's not to be touched. And when you want to look at him, avert your eyes, because your eyes are far too unclean. And if you happen to live in India, well, damn, throw flowers. He can't be walking on shit. He needs to walk on rose petals. The earth is far too filthy for our teacher. And then when you burden someone with such a heavy load, your expectation is way, way up here. The truth is, look, Jesus, in as much as he's a spiritual human being, he's a biological human being as well. He needs to eat. And when he eats, he needs to shit. And when he shits, he needs to wipe his ass. But when you remove those qualities about him, when you don't allow him to be human, you do something to Christianity. You do something to human beings. You do something very strange to the philosophy of Jesus Christ. You know, just in case you find yourself in moments where your spirit comes to life, Jesus is your man. Just in case you're at Home Depot, Karl Marx is your man. Just in case you have these mood swings and you have no idea where the hell they're coming from, Sigmund Freud is your man. And they all offer you different things. And there is a reason why we have all these heroes, because they talk to different personalities or different forces that live inside us. Jesus Christ is not a Costco. He's an item on a shelf, in an aisle. And you and I as human beings, we have different needs at different times. You don't need to go to Jesus Christ and ask, is this the right guy for me to get married to? What is he going to say? Do not throw your treasures down here? Well, what the fuck is good that going to do for me? You want to talk to your mom about that. Mom, is this a good guy? Says, look, honey, he's got no job. He's got no money. He smokes all day. If you want to be ruined, yeah, he's your man. So I don't know anything about absolute integrity. I think all of us have it from time to time, and then it disappears under an avalanche of just life's garbage. You know, I ran into Terry on the bus a couple of days ago. I don't think he recognized me. I kept looking at him, and he went like this to me. He said, this is the guy who brings me coffee. How is it that he gives me his beautiful middle fingers? Well, because he didn't recognize me. He thought I was going to jump him, that I somehow was attracted to him, that I was going to ask for his number. None of them true. Terry, there you go again. I'm glad at least you guys can laugh a little in this class, because we're not really talking about anything we're talking about. Is it time? 10:12? Yeah. Oh yeah, let's do, you have cookie? Okay, go ahead.
I don't have one, but I have to work.
This is Oakland, it's a place for quickies. Any, quickie? I'm sorry, Wolf.
Is God gay?
Is God gay؟ ما برون را ننگریم و قال را، ما درون را بنگریم و حال را. It's There is this wonderful, wonderful, wonderful story, since you like stories, given to us by Rumi. I think it's in the second book of Masnavi. It's the story of Moses and the shepherd. So let me tell you what the story is. دید موسی یک شبانی را به راه کو همی گفت ای خدا و ای اله تو کجایی تا شوم من چاکرت چارقت دوزم کنم شانه سرت دست کت بوسم به مالم پای کت وقت خواب آید برویم جای کت گر تو را بیماری آید به پیش من تو را غمخوار باشم همچو خویش ای خدای من فدای جان من جمله فرزندان و خان و مان من. Those are all the lines I know. Terry, there comes a point, if you ask me this question on Thursday, but maybe Thursday will not come, so let me just tell it to you now. That Moses is very angry at a shepherd because the shepherd is saying, God, you know, I will like wash your hair and what that called? Flat thing it? Flat iron it for you. If your back is like itching, I'll scratch it for you. If you're not feeling well, I'll make soup for you. And Moses is hearing this. And you know Moses, it's the Ten Commandments, the first four. That, no graven images of God. You can't even speak the name God with your mouth, with your tongue. It's all blasphemous. And so Moses, upon hearing all this nonsense coming from the shepherd, becomes really angry. He says, what the hell are you doing? Have you gone crazy? Do you know that if God was to hear this, he'll come down and just kick your ass? He's like Mike Tyson. And Moses, the shepherd says, oh man, you've reprimanded me. I'm burning from the inside. So he tears his cloak and says, I'm so embarrassed. I'm so ashamed. God, forgive me. And he just walks into the hills. And Moses hears this revelation, this message from the gods or Yahweh saying, listen, I don't care how people are on the outside. I don't care how they speak to me. I don't care how they dress. I don't care about their sexual orientation. Well, he doesn't say that. But I'm just, within the context of your question, the only thing I care for is how they are on the inside. How valuable, how depth is their spirit, how creative they are, what their connection is to me. You want to be gay, you want to be trans, you want to be bi, you want to be pan, you want to be plate, you want to be a bowl, you want to be a saucer, none of those things really matter. Are you a thinker? Are you a feeler? Are you someone who's willing to live an examined life? Because the moment you live an examined life, you have no choice but to be in awe, but to experience humility. That's what an examined life would force you to do. An examined life will tell you that, you don't know all that stuff. Humble yourself before a certain event. Learn from it. Be a good student. Is God gay? What? Yeah, if on the interior you're ripe, you could be gay. Not a problem with that. But if you happen to be an idiot, it really doesn't matter. Oh. We are, Terry? See? We talked about all these things that were not quickies and Terry didn't say anything. We talk about the thing quickie and he likes it. He's a quickie man. Anyone else before we before we go home? No? Yeah, Andres.
What is the best photo of Cristiano Ronaldo?
When they played, what is that? The bicycle kick he did? Was it Juventus? Yeah. Man, that was amazing. You guys know what a bicycle kick is, right? This is like a different planet. It's like a ball is going this way. Your back is to the goal. You jump up like a gazelle and you kick the ball. You go like this, like a gymnast. And then you look behind you, you see where the ball is going. And lo and behold, it went into the net. And everyone in the stadium stood up and applauded him. And Ronaldo took off his shirt and showed the rest of us his abs. I'm sorry for today's class being a little pornographic. Is that a word, pornographic? Well, it is now. My apologies if your mind has been a bit contaminated. So have a nice day. It's good to see you. See you on Thursday, yes? Yes.